Recorded Books presents a Lone Star audio production. The Tale of Applebeck Orchard by Susan Wittig Albert. This unabridged recording is narrated by Virginia Leishman and directed by Drew Sussman. This book is copyrighted 2009 by Susan Wittig Albert. This recording is copyrighted 2010 by Recorded Books, producer and publisher of Lone Star Audio, celebrating the work of great writers from Texas. And now, The Tale of Applebeck Orchard.
Prologue. Before the beginning. Every story has a beginning. Ours opens on a bright August morning in 1910 in the Lake District of England. The sun, eager to be about his day's work, has already waded through the layer of cottony mist that blanketed Lake Windermere, clambered up the steep eastern slope of Clafe Heights, and launched himself with a cheer into the clear blue sky above the land between the lakes, a vantage point from which he can beam down upon the leaf-green and lake-blue earth. But before every story there is, well, another story. For this is not the first time the sun has made his daily journey across the land between the lakes. A great deal of time, a vast immensity of time, an unthinkable infinity of time, human and otherwise, has transpired before the beginning of our story. In fact, you might think that the sun is already quite tired of his day-in and day-out routine, for he has climbed Clafe Heights more times than you or I could possibly count. But if you asked the sun, I'm sure he would tell you that every day brings something interesting and intriguing to observe. He has seen mountains rise beneath him, volcanoes erupt in his face, and seas ebb and flow. For a long time he watched icy glaciers advancing and retreating as they carved the ancient rock, scooping out convenient places for lakes and dropping enormous boulders here and there, as if they were pebbles carelessly falling through a hole in a boy's pocket. All this ice made the earth shiver, and even the sun felt a little chilly and remote, and not terribly interested in what was going on below. But then the weather warmed. The sun took off his overcoat and mittens, the ice thawed, and rivers and streams took over the job of pushing rocks here and moving mountains there, and generally rearranging the furniture. The lakes brimmed, and green things made themselves at home, putting down roots and thrusting up leaves. Mosses and lichens at first, then heather and bilberry and fern and willow and alder, and finally oak and beech and yew and juniper and the lovely hawthorn. Animals set up housekeeping in the dales and fells, fish filled the lakes, birds took to the skies, and the sun was happy for the company. And then the animals had to move over, because people had arrived. First came the clans who worked with stone, then iron and bronze. These people didn't travel much farther than they could walk in a day, having nearly everything they needed and wanted right in front of their noses. But then the Romans landed in the south of England. Since they had already travelled a considerable distance from Rome, you'd think they'd be ready to settle down. But they weren't. So they built a network of military roads and a massive wall of stone and turf right across England, east to west, to separate the civilized from the barbarians, although the sun was hard-pressed to tell which was which. But things didn't exactly turn out as the Romans planned, and a few centuries later they packed up and journeyed back to Rome. The Celts carried on until they were joined by the Angles and the Saxons, and they continued carrying on as the Norsemen arrived and settled around the lakes, farming in the dales and pasturing sheep in the fells. The old Roman roads conveyed wayfarers from one market town to another, whilst the villages and farms were linked by cartways suited to oxen and carts, bridleways suited to horses, and narrower footways suited to people. These were a great convenience, permitting people who lived in one valley to travel over the mountain to the next valley.